They called him the cowboy who never smiles. Ethan Cole had built walls so high no one could reach him, and he liked it that way. Then a storm changed everything. He found her spinning in the rain, laughing at the thunder like it was a gift from heaven. Her wagon was broken. She was stranded. And every instinct told him to ride away. But he didn't. He brought a stranger into his lonely cabin, and she saw straight through every wall he had ever built. "You're not a bad man," she told him. "You're a man who's hurting. There's a big difference." But her powerful uncle had other plans. He warned Ethan to stay away, or be destroyed. Now she has to choose. Her family's approval, or the broken man who finally made her feel alive. Can a woman who dances in storms heal a heart that forgot how to feel? Stay until the end. This love story will wreck you, in the best way possible. What you'll learn. The right person doesn't fix you. They make you brave enough to fix yourself. The meaning. Walls protect us from pain, but they also keep out joy. Sometimes the greatest risk is letting someone truly see you. If you believe in love that heals instead of hurts, subscribe and join our family. Tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone who saw the real you? And if this story touches your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. The sky turned a deep, angry purple, heavy with unspoken threats. Ethan Cole, a man of 32 years, had seen his share of storms, but this one felt personal. He was a smart man, but he had stopped looking for shelter a long, long time ago. He just kept riding, the town of Bellwater 5 miles behind him, and his lonely cabin another 7 miles ahead. The reason for his trip, a few coins from selling horses, felt heavy in his saddlebag. He despised towns and the way people looked at him, like a stray wolf. They were not entirely wrong. Then, through the roar of the downpour, he heard it. Pure, joyful laughter. It cut through the noise of the storm like a ray of sun. Ethan stopped his horse, thinking the thunder was playing tricks on his mind. But there it was again. His first thought was to ride on, to leave trouble where he found it. But a dangerous curiosity he thought was long dead pushed him forward. In a small clearing, he saw a tilted wagon with a shattered wheel. And next to it, a woman was spinning in the rain, her face turned to the sky, laughing. Ethan just sat on his horse, stunned. He had seen people broken by the wild, but he had never seen anyone welcome it with such joy. She finally stopped and saw him. Her smile was bright, untouched by the world's cruelty. "Isn't it magnificent?" she called out over the thunder. Ethan could only stare. This woman thought this dangerous storm was a thing of beauty. "Your wheel is broken," he stated, the only practical thought he could find. "I know," she laughed. "The timing is almost poetic, is it not?" He felt his jaw tighten. "You need help," he said. She tilted her head. "I was just thinking, when was the last time I truly felt a storm, instead of just hiding from it?" "You are going to get yourself killed," Ethan said plainly. "Well, we all have to go sometime," she answered with a smile. "Might as well enjoy the rain." He had no answer for that. Every instinct screamed at him to leave her to her fate. Instead, he heard himself say, "My cabin is about 7 miles from here. You can wait out the storm there." Her smile grew even wider. "That is very kind of you, Mr. Ethan Cole." "Well, Mr. Ethan Cole, I am Leah Monroe, and I accept." She pointed to her horse. "But my wagon is not going anywhere." "Leave it," Ethan said, already dismounting and untying her horse. "Are you traveling alone?" he asked. "I was supposed to meet someone in Bellwater," Leah explained, "but I seem to be terrible with directions." "You do not seem dangerous, Mr. Cole," Leah observed softly as he worked. "Just very, very sad." Her words struck him like a punch. He turned away, grabbing her trunk. "I am not anything," he said. his voice rough. "Now get on your horse. We are losing what is left of the day." He moved to help her, cupping his hands for her boot. As he lifted her into the saddle, she put a hand on his shoulder to steady herself. For a moment he felt its warmth right through his soaked coat. Then he stepped back as if burned. "This way," he said gruffly, getting back on his own horse. "Stay close." As they rode, Ethan could not stop asking himself what in the world he was doing. He was bringing a storm-dancing stranger into the one safe, empty place he had left. The trail turned mean, twisting through rock and pine with no real cover from the driving rain. A few times, Ethan had to get down and lead his horse Ash through the slick spots. Leia followed right behind him, never saying a word of complaint. He glanced back once and saw her face turned up to the sky, looking almost peaceful. "You really are crazy," he muttered under his breath. About 2 hours later, Leia's horse lost its footing. He heard her gasp and wheeled his own horse around to steady hers. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice was strained, and she was shaking from the cold. Guilt twisted in his stomach. "It's not much farther," he told her. The cabin finally appeared out of the gloom. It was just a one-room shelter, but it was solid, and that was all that mattered. Ethan helped her down from her horse, catching her arm when her legs nearly gave out. "This is home," she whispered, looking at the cabin. "It's shelter," he corrected. He'd never called any place home. He settled the horses and rubbed them down, then found Leia standing in the doorway, watching him. "You're good with them," she said. "Horses make more sense than people," he replied. "They don't lie." He grabbed her bags and motioned her inside. He lit an oil lamp, and the light showed how little he owned: a table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed, and a stove. There were no pictures, nothing that spoke of a life beyond just getting by. He braced himself for her pity, but instead she just said, "It's honest." He moved to the stove to build a fire. "You should get out of those wet things," he said without looking at her. "Just turn your back," she replied. "I'll be quick." He faced the wall, listening to the rustle of fabric. "All right," she said. He turned to find her wrapped in his blanket, her wet dress hanging near the growing fire. Her hair was a warm brown, and she looked younger now. "Your turn," she said gently. He quickly changed into dry clothes with his back to her. When he faced her again, she was looking at the few books on his shelf. "You read," she observed. "Why does it matter?" he grumbled. "Because what a person reads says something about them," she answered with a small smile. He finally gave in. "They're about horses, training, sickness, nothing about people." Leia was quiet for a second, then said, "I love storms." She told him a story about her mother, who was terrified of them. Every time a storm came, her mother would hide in the middle of the house, trembling. "When I was 12, my mother passed away," Leia said, her voice soft. "A sickness took her in 3 days. After a huge storm came through, I sat in the house waiting to be afraid like she was." She looked up at him, her eyes bright. "But I was not afraid. I was angry." "The real trouble wasn't the storm, you see, the sickness that took my mother. It came from inside. I used to go out and just scream at the thunder, but the storm don't care. It just is. That's why you have to feel things while you can. Life is just too short to spend it hiding, Mr. Cole." Later, after she'd settled in with a cup of hot coffee, she asked him straight, "The man at the store in Bellwater, he called you the cowboy who never smiles. Is he right?" Ethan stared into his cup for a long time. "I reckon there is not much worth smiling about." She just looked at him and said, "Well, that is the saddest thing I have ever heard. That is just giving up." "Mr. Cole, what on earth happened to you?" "Nothing happened to me. That is a lie. And you know it." A flash of anger went through him. "You do not know a thing about me. I know you live out here all alone with no pictures on the walls, nothing that ties you to another person. But I also know you brought a stranger in from a storm when you clearly did not want to." His jaw was tight. "Maybe you should learn to mind your own business." He regretted it the second he said it. But Leia just met his gaze. "I am sorry. You are right. Pushing too hard is a fault of mine. Her apology knocked the wind right out of his sails. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. You can take the bed. I will sleep on the floor, leaving me out there in the storm. Ethan closed his eyes and just grunted. Go to sleep, Miss Monroe. Laya. Please call me Laya. Go to sleep, Laya. He heard her shift in the bed, getting comfortable. He thought she was asleep, but then her voice came out of the dark, quiet as a whisper. Good night, Ethan. Hearing her say his name did something to him, like a crack forming in a stone wall he had built around his heart. He did not answer. The next morning, he woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. Laya was already up and dressed, moving around his kitchen like she belonged there, humming a little tune. For a second, he felt like he was in someone else's life. Ease. My aunt used to say I made the best eggs in 3 counties. She was a wonderful woman who could not cook to save her life. Ethan just washed his face, watching her in the little mirror. She looked completely at home, and it felt all wrong. How do you like your eggs? I do not care. She put a plate down. I made them soft. If you do not like them, I will remember for next time. There is not going to be a next time, he said, his voice harsher than he meant. The storm passed. You can make it to Bellwater now. A flicker of hurt crossed her face before she hid it with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Of course. They ate in a heavy silence that was louder than the thunder had ever been. Steeple first, thank you. She got on her horse, looking down at him. And thank you for everything last night. It is fine, he cut her off, unable to stand the warmth in her voice. Just be careful. Leia looked at him, her green eyes searching his face. Then she gave him a soft, sad smile. Goodbye, Ethan Cole. I sure hope you find something worth smiling about someday. She rode off, and he stood there until she was long gone. He stood there until the silence of the place settled back in, feeling heavier and colder than before. For the next 3 days, he told himself he was glad to be alone again. He was lying to himself. On the 4th day, he rode to Bellwater, telling himself he was not looking for her, but his eyes searched every face in town anyway. At the general store, the owner, Davies, leaned against the door frame. That pretty girl who came through asking about you? She made it to the Monroe Ranch just fine. The name felt like a punch to Ethan's gut. Her uncle owns it, James Monroe. Ethan's blood ran cold. He knew Monroe. Everyone did. A rich, ruthless man with whom Ethan had a bad history from 3 years ago. Funny thing, Davies added. Monroe did not seem too pleased to hear she took shelter with you. Ethan swung onto his horse, wanting no part of this trouble. As he rode off, Davies called out, Monroe asked where your cabin was. Then his voice hardened. I told him what I'm telling you. Whatever happened back then, let it stay there. Monroe. Ethan tried not to think about Leia living under that man's thumb. For 2 weeks he worked himself to the bone, hoping to be too tired to think of her. He nearly succeeded. Then came the harvest dance. Ethan had no plans to go, but a trip to Bellwater for supplies put him right in the middle of the festivities. The whole town was gussied up with ribbons. As he was leaving, a wagon rolled in, and there she was, Laya, sitting beside an older woman, her hair pinned up proper. She was wearing a deep blue dress, and when she laughed, the sound hit Ethan hard. She looked happy and healthy, like she belonged. He turned his horse to go, but she spotted him and called out his name, her voice full of genuine pleasure. Ethan Cole should have kept right on riding. Instead, he turned back as Laya hurried over to him. She was a little breathless. I was hoping I'd see you, she said. I wanted to thank you properly. You'd have been fine, Ethan said, his voice rough. Her smile wavered. Still, I'm grateful. I've thought about you. That made him meet her eyes. Don't waste your thoughts on me. Her aunt called for her then. Laya bit her lip and asked, Will you come to the dance tonight, please? I'd like to see you there. I don't go to dances. Why not? Because I don't. He started to leave, but she reached out and her fingers grazed his boot, stopping him cold. "Ethan," she said softly, "sometimes what we think we want and what we truly need are two different things." She let her hand fall. "The dance starts at sunset. I'll save you a slice of apple pie if you change your mind." Then she walked away. Ethan sat on his horse, frozen. He rode out of town with his solitude, but it didn't feel as comfortable as it used to. At sunset, he sat on his porch, imagining Leia in her blue dress, dancing with someone else. The thought made him stand up and pace like a caged wolf. This was foolish. She was just a woman he'd helped one time. But he couldn't recall the last time anyone had looked at him like he was worth knowing. "To hell with it," he muttered. 20 minutes later, he was riding back to Bellwater, clean shirt on and beard trimmed. The town square was alive with fiddle music and lanterns. He saw folks laughing and dancing with a simple joy he hadn't felt in years. He almost turned back, but then he heard her voice. "You came." Leia was standing in the doorway, glowing in the lantern light and smiling like he was the only person there. "I told you I'd save you some pie," she said, walking to him. "I don't much care for pie," Ethan lied. "Then you can watch me eat it," she said, linking her arm in his. "Come on, I promise they don't bite." Ethan let her lead him into the hall, feeling every eye in the place turn their way. "Leia, dear," a woman with sharp eyes said, "I see you brought your hermit friend." "Aunt Clara, this is Ethan Cole." Clara beamed at him. "The man from the storm. Thank you for helping my niece." Before Ethan could say a word, a heavy hand clamped down on his shoulder. He turned and found himself looking straight at James Monroe. Monroe was older, but his eyes were just as cold. "Ethan Cole," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes. "It has been a long time." "Mr. Monroe," Ethan replied, his voice flat. "I hear you offered my niece shelter," Monroe said, his grip tightening. "Well now, ain't that charitable of you, Cole? Taking in a young woman all by her lonesome." The accusation was as thick as mud, and Ethan felt a fire start in his belly. "Your niece was in trouble. I helped her, that's it. Is it now?" Monroe's gaze shifted to Leia, then bored back into Ethan. "'Cause it looks to me like you saw a chance and you took it." "Uncle James," Leia said, her face gone white, "he was a perfect gentleman. You'll forgive me if I don't take the word of a naive girl. You don't know men like Cole." "Men like me," Ethan said, his voice low and cold. "Men with a reputation," Monroe shot back, finally letting go. "Men who get run out of towns." The room had gone dead quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting to see if the stories about him were true. "What about 3 years ago?" Ethan challenged. "What about it?" Monroe cut in. "You nearly beat a man to death over a horse. Would have put him 6 feet under if folks hadn't pulled you off. He was killing that animal. I stopped him." "You near on killed him. There is a world of difference." Ethan's hands clenched. Every word was true, and that's what stung the most. He had lost himself to rage that day, and a man paid for it. "Uncle James, please," Leia pleaded, her voice unsteady. "Ethan helped me." "What matters," Monroe said, his eyes locked on Ethan, "is keeping you from making a fool of yourself. And getting tangled up with his kind is a bad mistake." "I reckon Leia can choose her own company," Ethan said softly. "Can she now?" Monroe stepped closer, his voice a low rumble. "So long as she's under my roof, eating my food, her choices are my business. And I won't have my family name sullied by a man with a dangerous temper." The words found their mark. Ethan felt that old familiar feeling of being worthless settle back over him. "You're right," he said, his voice empty. He looked at Leia's pained face. "I shouldn't have come." "Ethan, don't," she started. But he was already moving through the crowd. He heard her call his name, but he couldn't stop. Monroe was right. He was damaged goods, the kind of man a woman like Leia ought to run from. He was untying his horse, Ash, when she caught up, breathless. "Don't you let him run you off like this. He ain't running me off. He's just telling the truth." "He's being cruel," she insisted. "Everything he said about me is true, Leia." I nearly did kill that man. I've got a rage in me I can't always hold back. Control. You ought to stay clear of a man like me. I just do not believe that. Then you are a bigger fool than your uncle thinks. He pulled on the reins. Go on and dance. Find a man who is worth your time. But what if I think you are the one worth my time? The words hit him like a physical blow. He looked down at the grit in her jaw and the fire in her eyes, and the need to believe her was a sharp ache in his chest. Why? He asked, his voice a low growl. Why in the world would you think that? Because I saw the real you in that cabin. I saw the books you read and how you cared for your horses. You gave me your own bed, no questions asked. I saw behind those walls you build, Ethan, and I liked the man I found. You saw what you wanted to see. No, I saw the man you were afraid to let anyone else see. She stepped toward his horse, her hand finding his boot again. You are not a bad man. You are a man who is hurting. There is a big difference. He wanted to ride away and prove her wrong, but the words were stuck in his throat. Instead, he heard himself ask, why does it matter so much to you? Laya's smile was soft and full of sorrow. Because every soul deserves someone who truly sees them and decides to stay. And I reckon right now, I might be the only one willing to do that for you. Before he could think of a reply, Monroe's voice sliced through the night. Laya, get inside, now. She looked from her uncle in the doorway back to Ethan. You coming back tomorrow? Maybe. We could really talk without him around. Your uncle is right to keep you away from me. I will decide what I should and should not do, Laya said flatly. Tomorrow. The creek on the east side of our land, you know the one? He knew it. Every rancher for miles knew Monroe's property lines. Noon, Laya said. Be there, please. Laya Monroe. Her uncle's voice was now a clear threat. I have to go, she whispered, but I meant it. I will be there at noon, whether you show up or not. I surely hope you do. She gave his boot a final squeeze and walked back to the hall, her head held high. Ethan watched Monroe put a possessive arm around her and guide her inside, feeling something inside him splinter. The ride home was a blur of thoughts he had spent years burying. His cabin was just as he left it, a cold and empty space. He lit a lamp and stood in the quiet, seeing her in the chair, wrapped in his blanket, smelling the ghost of the breakfast she had cooked. Everyone deserves someone who truly sees them and decides to stay. Her words haunted him. He lay down on his bed for the first time in what felt like forever, breathing in the faint scent she had left behind. He swore to himself he would not go. He would retreat into his solitude where no one could see the broken man he had become. But when the first light of dawn spilled over the mountains, Ethan was already awake, his mind already at the creek, and he knew he had just told himself another lie. He was going to meet her, and the thought of it terrified him right down to his bones. The creek was a clear, cold ribbon of water winding past the cottonwood trees on the edge of the Monroe Ranch. Ethan got there early, the waiting at his cabin unbearable. He paced the grassy bank like a man walking to the gallows. This was a mistake. Every sensible part of him knew that getting tangled up with Laya Monroe would only bring them both a world of hurt. But sense had left him sometime between last night's shame and this morning's ride. He was a fool waiting for a woman who deserved better. The sun was high overhead when he finally heard the sound of a horse. He turned to see Laya on her mare, her hair flying free and a smile on her face that made his heart ache. You came, she said, swinging down from her saddle. I hoped you would, but I was not sure. I was not sure either, Ethan confessed. She tied her horse next to his and came to stand so close he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. I am glad you are here. I needed to say I am sorry for how my uncle acted. He was just looking out for you. That is what family does. He was cruel, Laya said, her face hardening. He had no right to bring up your past like that, to shame you in front of everybody. Everything he said was the truth. The truth can be used as a weapon, Ethan. And that is exactly what he did. He took your past and used it to wound you. She moved a step closer, and he had to fight the urge to back away. Will you tell me what happened 3 years ago with that man? Ethan stared at the water rushing by. Why? Because I want to understand you, not to judge you. Understand what? For a long time there was only the sound of the creek and the wind. Then Ethan began to speak, his voice thick with the effort of digging up old ghosts. His name was Garrett. He had bought a horse from a fella a couple towns over. Paid a pretty penny for it. It was a fine young stallion full of life. Ethan's hands tightened into fists. But Garrett did not want life. He wanted a slave. When the horse fought back against his rough hands, he started beating it. It was not training, it was just pure, ugly meanness. How did you get involved? I was riding through town and saw it happening right in the street. The horse was screaming, covered in blood, and Garrett was laughing. Ethan's voice went low. I told him to stop. He told me to mind my own business, so I made it my business. You stopped him. I did not just stop him, I broke him. The words came out raw and full of self-hate. I pulled him off that poor animal, and I gave him a taste of what he had been giving the horse. I broke his jaw, 3 of his ribs, and nearly took his knee apart. It took 4 men to pull me off him. Leia was silent. He finally risked a look at her. She did not seem disgusted, just thoughtful. What happened to the horse? She asked. The question caught him off guard. I bought it from him right after, paid him double what it was worth, and spent 6 months nursing it back. Do you still have him? He passed last year, from colic. The loss was still a sharp pain, but he had 5 good years, 5 years of knowing a kind hand. You saved him, Leia said softly. I nearly killed a man. A man who was torturing a helpless animal, she countered, meeting his gaze. A man who laughed at pain. Look, what you did might not have been right. Violence is rarely the answer. But I understand it. And the fact that you feel such guilt over it tells me more about you than the fight itself. Your uncle sees it differently. So do most folks. Most folks were not there. They did not see what you saw. They did not feel that rage. Leia reached out, slow enough for him to pull back, and took his hand. Her touch was warm against his rough skin. You are not a monster, Ethan. You are a man who feels so strongly about stopping pain that you sometimes lose yourself in the process. That is not evil. It is just being human. Her touch seemed to unlock something inside him. He looked at their joined hands, unable to believe someone could know the worst part of him and still choose to stay. Sometimes I scare myself, he admitted in a quiet voice. The anger in me, it is like a wild animal. I have spent years building fences to keep it locked up. But what if the fences break? Then you build them stronger, she said, squeezing his hand. And you let someone help you carry the load. You do not have to carry this all by yourself, Ethan. I have been alone with it for 3 years. I am used to it. Being used to something does not make it right. She offered him that bright, warm smile again. Come on, sit with me. Let's talk about something besides your past. They sat on the creek bank, their shoulders almost touching. Leia did not let go of his hand, and slowly Ethan started to feel a peace he had not known in years. Tell me about your horses, Leia said, the ones you have now. And so Ethan talked. He told her about Ash and the others, about their habits, and how different each one was. Leia listened, truly listened, asking smart questions. You love them, she said. They are honest, he replied. They are loyal, and they do not ever pretend to be something they are not. Unlike most people, Ethan corrected himself, you are different. You say what is on your mind, and you do what you promise. You are a straight shooter. Leia let out a bright laugh. Oh, I play games, just not with a person's heart. They are too precious for that. He finally told her the truth about why he came to the dance. Because I could not stop thinking about you. The words felt like a confession. It is foolish, I know. We barely know each other. Time is not the only way to measure a connection, Leia said softly. Sometimes you meet someone, and it feels like coming home. She looked him right in the eye. I have never met anyone who made me want to understand them the way you do. What if there is nothing worth finding under all these walls? Leia simply replied, I have already seen that there is. Just then, 3 riders appeared from the trees. Ethan's gut tightened when he saw it was James Monroe. Leia, get on your horse, Monroe ordered. His voice was cold and sharp. Uncle James, we were just talking. I said now. Ethan moved slowly, putting himself between Leia and her uncle. She has done nothing wrong, Monroe sneered, stalking closer. I told you to stay away from her. I will not have my niece's reputation ruined because she is taken in by some violent drifter. Uncle James, that is enough, Leia said, her voice shaking with anger. Ethan is not trash, and I am not a child. You are living under my roof, Monroe shot back. Then maybe I should not be, Leia declared, surprising them all. Gratitude does not mean you get to control my whole life. Ethan, I am not going to stop seeing him just because you disapprove. Leia's words cut through the tension. She cared, and she said it right in front of her uncle. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He quietly told her, It is not worth losing your family over. She turned to him, her eyes certain. You are worth it. Do you not understand that? You are worth fighting for. Her uncle, Monroe, scoffed. This is what happens when women make their own choices. They choose poorly. He pointed a finger at Ethan. That man is damaged goods, Leia. He will hurt you. His temper will turn on you, and you will see why I tried to protect you. He will not, Leia said, her voice firm. I have seen his kindness with his horses. He gave me shelter when he did not have to. She looked Monroe straight in the eye. You judge him by his worst moment. I choose to see his best ones, too. Monroe noticed a ranch hand looking uncomfortable. Leave us, he ordered. Both of you head back to the ranch. Once they were gone, his voice dropped. You have no idea what you are risking. His past will follow him, and it will follow you. I can handle gossip, Leia said. Monroe's voice was cold. Can you handle violence? Because that is what he is. Stop talking about me like I am not here. Ethan's own anger finally broke through. You want to call me violent? Fine, I am. I have a rage inside me that scares me more than it will ever scare you. But I have spent 3 years learning to control it. I am not the same man I was. Once violent, always violent, Monroe said. It is in your blood. Then what does that make you? Ethan stepped forward. You are standing here, threatening me, trying to bend your niece to your will. You use your power and money to force people. How is that different from what I did? The only difference is you use words and wealth instead of your fists. Monroe's jaw tightened. I am protecting my family. You are controlling them, Ethan countered. There is a difference. The 2 men stared each other down. Then Monroe turned to Leia, his expression softening. You are like a daughter to me. When your mother, my baby sister, passed, I promised I would keep you safe. He motioned toward Ethan. This is not safe. Love never is, Leia said softly. But living in fear is not living at all. Love? Monroe said flatly. You think you love him after a few meetings? I think I could, given a chance. Leia's hand found Ethan's again, and I want that chance, Uncle James. Monroe looked from one to the other, his face a storm of emotions. Finally, he looked at Ethan. You hurt her in any way, and I will destroy you. I have the money to ruin your life so completely you will wish you had never been born. Do you understand? I understand, Ethan said, his voice steady. But if I ever hurt her, you would not need to destroy me. I would do it myself. Something shifted in Monroe's eyes, maybe a hint of respect. He turned to Leia one last time. Be careful, sweetheart. I will, she promised. Monroe got on his horse, then looked back at Ethan. Prove me wrong. He rode off, leaving them in the quiet by the creek. Well, that went well, Leia said. The dry remark made Ethan let out a short, surprised laugh. You are insane, he said. Probably, she grinned. But you laughed. I heard it. Ethan Cole actually laughed. Do not get used to it. Too late. They stood there grinning at each other. A wall inside Ethan started to crumble. "Did you mean it?" he asked quietly. "What you said to your uncle?" "Every word," Laya said, stepping closer. "I know it is fast and maybe foolish, but I care about you. I want to see where this could go if you are willing." Ethan wanted to say yes, but fear held him back. Fear of proving Monroe right. "I'm not good at this," he said instead, "at letting people get close." "I know." Laya's hand rested on his chest. "I am just asking you to try, one day at a time." Her touch felt warm through his shirt. He covered her hand with his own. "What if I disappoint you?" She smiled. "What if you do not? What if this is exactly what we both needed?" Before he could answer, a single snowflake landed between them. They both looked up as more began to fall from the gray sky. "Snow?" Laya breathed. "In October?" A knot formed in Ethan's stomach. An early snow meant a hard winter was coming. "You need to get back to your uncle's ranch," he said. "This could get bad. Come with me, you could stay. Your uncle just threatened my existence." "I do not think showing up in a snowstorm will help." Ethan was already moving to the horses. "Go, get home safe." Laya did not move, snowflakes catching in her hair. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise you will not use this storm as an excuse to hide away and push me out." He wanted to, but he never made promises he was not sure he could keep. "I will try," he said. "That is all I can offer. Then I will take it." She moved to her horse and looked down at him. "When the snow stops, come find me. Promise me, Ethan. I promise." Her smile was bright, though her eyes were full of worry. She turned her horse and rode off into the thickening snow. Ethan watched until she was gone, then headed for home. The snow fell for 3 days straight. When it finally stopped, the world was buried under nearly 2 feet of white. The temperature had dropped hard, and he knew the journey would be dangerous. But he also knew he had made a promise to Leia. It took him hours to dig a path and saddle his horse, Ash. The animal did not want to go out in the deep snow, and every instinct told Ethan this was a fool's errand. But keeping his word felt more important than his own safety. The ride to Monroe's ranch was brutal. The trail had vanished, forcing Ethan to navigate by memory through the biting cold, driven by the promise he had made. By the time the ranch house came into view, Ethan was frozen solid and worn clean out. He was tying up his horse when the door swung open. James Monroe stood there holding a rifle. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "I promised Leia I would come." "Took you long enough," Monroe grumbled. "The trails are nearly gone. Is she all right?" A flicker of concern crossed Monroe's hard face. "She is sick. Came down with a fever 2 days ago. She keeps asking for you." Monroe lowered the rifle a little. "I do not like you, Cole. I do not trust you. But my niece needs you, so you can come in. But if you cause one bit of trouble, I will throw you out myself." "Understood," Ethan said. Monroe led him inside. He paused outside a bedroom door and said, "That woman in there deserves someone who is just as certain about her as she is about him. You ought to figure that out." Ethan walked into the room and his heart ached. Leia was pale and sick, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "You came," she whispered. "I knew you would." "I promised," he said, taking a seat by her bed. She grabbed his hand with what little strength she had. "Ethan, this is going to be a hard winter. When I get better, I am coming to your cabin. I am going to stay there with you." Ethan was stunned, speechless. "You cannot. Your uncle would never allow it. My uncle does not get to decide this for me. I do." Her eyes were full of fire despite the fever. "Meeting you woke something up in me. It taught me that life is too short to live by another person's rules. My reputation can survive, or it will not. I do not care anymore." "I care about you, Ethan," she said, pulling his hand to her heart. "I care more about you than I do about what other people think. And I cannot stand the thought of you being all alone in that cabin this winter. Why?" The question tore out of him. "Why would you risk so much for a man like me?" "Because you are worth it," she said, plain and simple, and because I know you would do the same for me. And she was right. He would. When you are well, he heard himself say, if you still want to come, I will not be the one to stop you. The door opened, and it was time to go. Get well, he said. I promise I will come back to check on you. Monroe was waiting for him at the bottom of the stairs. What did she say to you? He demanded. Ethan looked him square in the eye. She said she is staying with me at my cabin for the winter. Monroe's face turned red. Absolutely not. I forbid it. With respect, sir, you cannot. She is a grown woman, and it is her choice to make. Hold on a minute. Monroe's voice stopped him. You actually care for her, don't you? Ethan turned back. More than I thought possible. Then you ought to marry her. Make an honest woman of her. Protect her name. The words hit Ethan like a blow. Marriage. The idea was so foreign he couldn't rightly wrap his head around it. I can't, he said at last. I got nothing to offer her. No money, no name. She deserves better than that. What she deserves is a man who sees her worth, who'll fight for her the way she's fighting for you right now. Monroe's face softened just a touch. I still don't like you, Cole. Don't trust you one bit. But I trust her. And if she thinks you're worth the gamble, maybe she sees something I don't. Ethan just nodded and stepped out into the biting cold. The ride home was a blur of swirling snow and troubled thoughts. Marriage. A life with Leia. It scared him half to death, but it also lit a small, fragile hope inside him that he barely dared to feel. By the time he got back to the cabin, the storm was howling. He sat by the fire, just thinking. Leia wanted him, despite everything. The question was simple. Was he man enough to try? That snow just kept falling for 6 more days straight. For 7 long days, the snow had him pinned in. A world of white silence. Ethan kept telling himself it was for the best. A man with his past was better off alone. He almost believed it right up until he heard the crunch of hooves. Through the blinding sun on the snow, a single rider came. It was Leia. She looked pale and tired from her fever, but she sat tall in the saddle. Her saddlebags were packed full, not for a short visit, but for a long stay. She had actually come. He stood there, frozen half in wonder and half in pure panic as she swung down from her horse. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her breath fogging in the cold air. "You shouldn't be here," he managed to say, the words feeling like a lie. "This ride was too hard on you." "It was necessary," she answered, walking right up to him. "Now, are you going to help me with these bags? Or are we going to stand out here and freeze?" A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips. He moved to her horse and started unstrapping the gear. "Does your uncle know you're here?" he asked. "He does," she said, grabbing a smaller bag. "We had a long talk about it. He doesn't like it one bit, but he knows it's my choice. He made me promise to come right back if you treat me poorly. He also sent enough supplies to feed an army." Ethan looked and saw just how loaded down her poor mare was. "How much did you bring?" he asked. "Enough to not be a burden," she said, heading for his cabin door. "I may be running on feelings, but I'm not a fool." Inside, the cabin was cold. The fire burned down to glowing embers. Leia went straight to the stove and began building the fire back up, moving with an easy confidence. "I'm not here for you to take care of me, Ethan," she said, not looking at him. "I'm here to be your partner." She paused, a slight blush on her cheeks. "As for sleeping, I'll take the bed, you take the floor. Same as before. Unless we both decide on something different." She turned from the now crackling fire. "I just want to see if what we have can grow into something real. If it can't, at least we gave it a fair shot. But I think it can, Ethan. I think we could be real good together." He wanted to believe her, but the old doubts were always there. "I'm not an easy man to live with," he said quietly. "Then we'll learn together," she answered, stepping close and placing a hand on his chest. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. Just be honest." The weight of her trust felt heavy. "What if your uncle is right about me?" he whispered. "Stop," Leia said, her voice firm but kind. I need you to stop thinking of every way this could go wrong. Can you do that for me? Can you give us a real chance without planning for the end? He looked into her determined green eyes and knew she was right. I can try, he said. Good, she smiled. And it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. That's all I'm asking for. The days that followed fell into a simple, easy rhythm. They rose early, sharing coffee before starting their chores. She cooked, and he discovered how much he'd missed a good meal. In return, he taught her about the horses, how to earn their trust without force. She had a gentle way about her, and the animals took to her right away. One afternoon, he watched her brushing down Ash, his big gelding. The horse's ears were relaxed, turned toward her. He likes you, Ethan said. He trusts you. Leia smiled, running a hand down the horse's strong neck. He saved my life once, Ethan added. Horses are like that. You take care of them, they take care of you. Is that how you see everything? She asked softly. Relationships too? He paused. Tell me about your family, Ethan, she said. And just like that, the easy peace of the moment was gone. Not much to tell, Ethan said, his focus steady on his work. He explained how his father died from a fall, and how his mother passed from a sudden sickness when he was 17. After that, he worked on different ranches, learning that horses were more dependable than people. Folks always leave, he concluded. It is just easier not to get too close. Leia's voice was gentle. That sounds safe, but it does not sound happy. When he met her gaze, a silent understanding passed between them. She touched his face softly. Thank you for letting me in, even a little. At that moment, a gust of wind announced that heavy snow was falling again. They rushed inside as the storm began, and for the next 2 days they stayed warm in the cabin. Her voice reading a book filled the room, and Ethan knew she had changed his world without moving a thing. Ethan Cole figured he was a lost cause, a man who deserved the bitter quiet of his lonely cabin. But a wicked snowstorm brought Leia, and with her, a warmth the old walls hadn't felt in years. This story is about how the right person can mend the most broken parts of you. So stick around to see if a little kindness can save a man from himself. After 3 solid days of snowfall, they were completely socked in. Ethan looked at the wall of white outside and said, Well, reckon we'll have to dig our way out. Leia just grinned and pulled on a heavy coat. Then let's get to digging. They shoveled for hours, falling into an easy rhythm. You handle that shovel like you were born to it, Ethan said, impressed. Leia laughed, her cheeks rosy from the cold. I grew up in Montana, cowboy. Snow and I are old friends. That night, watching her read by the fire, Ethan felt a strange comfort settle over him. She just fit, like a missing piece he never knew he was looking for. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. Leia, he said, his voice a little rough. I'm glad you're here. Her smile was brighter than the firelight. I'm glad to be here too, Ethan. 2 weeks passed in a blur of snow and shared meals. They were stuck together until spring, a fact that should have made Ethan climb the walls. Instead, he felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. One night, Leia looked at him across the fire. Tell me something real about you, she said softly. Something you've never told another soul. He hesitated, then finally admitted, I used to write poetry before my mom passed. It was how I made sense of things. That's not foolish, Ethan, she said, her voice firm. That's brave. He just shook his head. You see good in everything, don't you? Leia reached over and took his calloused hand. I see the truth in things. And I see you, Ethan Cole. Not just the tough shell you show the world. He felt a lifetime of defenses start to crumble. What if I'm just pretending to be a better man than I am? She squeezed his hand. Then you're the best pretender I've ever met. I see how patient you are with your horses. I see how you gave me your bed without a second thought. I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not looking." His breath hitched. "You're precious," he said gruffly, "and I'm afraid I'll just end up ruining things." Laya moved to kneel in front of him, her eyes shining. "Let me tell you what kind of man you are. You're the kind who gives his bed to a stranger. You're the kind who rides through a blizzard to check on a sick neighbor. You're a good man, Ethan, who's been hurt so bad you had to build walls to survive." Tears stung his eyes. "I don't know how to be what you need." She smiled gently. "You already are." He pulled her into his arms then, holding on like she was an anchor in a storm. She melted against him, her arms wrapping tight around his waist. After a long moment, he whispered into her hair, "I care about you, Laya, more than I thought I could, and it scares me half to death." "I know," she murmured against his chest. "We'll just have to learn how to make it wonderful instead of scary, together." And then she kissed him. It was a soft, sweet promise that shattered his isolation into a million pieces. When she pulled back, her smile was so warm it made his heart ache in the best way. "See?" she whispered. "Wonderful." For the first time in years, a real, genuine smile spread across Ethan's face, reaching all the way to his eyes. "Yeah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Wonderful." Outside, the winter could rage all it wanted. Inside the small cabin, something that felt an awful lot like hope was finally starting to bloom. They still slept in separate beds that night, but everything had changed. The morning sun lit up a world of crystal, and for the first time, Ethan Cole looked out at the endless winter and saw the promise of spring. The next morning, the land was covered in a perfect sheet of white. "It will not last," Ethan said as he joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "But for this moment, it is perfect," Laya answered with a small smile. "And that is enough." He understood she was not just talking about the snow. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable routine of chores and quiet evenings by the fire. With her encouragement, Ethan even started writing poetry again. The first few words were rusty, but he found his voice describing the winter around them. "You have a gift," she told him, her eyes bright as she took his hand. "Thank you for sharing it with me." But their time together was not always easy. On some days, Ethan's old habits would return, and he would build his walls up, becoming cold and distant. Laya finally spoke to him about it. "You are retreating again," she said kindly. He tried to deny it, but eventually confessed to a feeling of being trapped. Laya saw the truth right away. "You are not afraid of the snow. You are afraid this good thing we have will disappear. So you are ending it before you can get hurt." Her words hit him hard. "I am not going anywhere," she promised. "But you must talk to me when you feel that fear. Let me help you believe this is real." It was the hardest thing he had ever done, but Ethan agreed to try. The next time he felt himself shutting down, he forced himself to speak to her instead. Her patience made it easier each time. As the snow piled higher, cutting them off completely, Ethan discovered a sense of peace. One evening, Leia asked him again about the incident with Garrett. "Do you have regrets about how you stopped him?" Ethan thought carefully. "I regret my own anger, but I do not regret protecting that horse. I am not sure I could have done it differently." He looked at her directly. "Does that scare you?" "No," she replied, "because you are not that person anymore." "You are still a man who protects the helpless," Leia continued, her gaze unwavering. "You have just learned to control that fire inside you. I see your gentle nature every single day. You are not a violent man, Ethan. You are a passionate one." Her total faith in him was overwhelming. He pulled her close, and in that moment, he realized that he did not just accept her presence. He truly needed it. The thought was both frightening and wonderful. "Laya," he whispered into her hair, "I love you." She pulled back, her eyes shining with tears. "Say that again." "I love you," he said, the words feeling true and right. You changed me." A tear rolled down her cheek, but she was smiling. "I love you too. If we are both scared, then at least we are scared together." "Ethan, I want to stay," Leia said, resting her forehead against his. "Not just for the winter. I want to build a real life with you." Ethan pulled back in disbelief. He reminded her of the hard, isolated life she would be choosing, a world away from her uncle's ranch. She cupped his face in her hands, assuring him that this life with him was the only thing that ever made her happy. He looked deep into her eyes and saw only certainty. "Then stay," he said softly. "Build your life with me. Be my wife. Marry me." Leia gasped. She told him he did not have to do this just to make things proper. "I am not," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am asking because I want you to be mine in every way that matters." A whispered yes was her answer as the storm raged on outside. That night they simply held each other, discovering that shared warmth was better than any fire. When a thaw finally came in February, Leia knew they had to face the world. She insisted they tell her uncle their plans before another storm hit. He agreed, though he hated to leave their safe haven. They waited 3 days for the trail to become passable. The journey was slow, with the horses picking their way through melting snow. When Monroe's sprawling ranch finally came into view, he was standing on the porch waiting. His face was a mask, impossible to read. Behind him, his wife Helen appeared, her expression flooding with relief at the sight of Leia. "You are alive," was all Monroe said. Leia took Ethan's hand, a deliberate move that made her uncle's eyes narrow. They gathered in his large study, where Monroe fixed them with a hard stare. "So," he stated, "you survived the winter together in that cabin." His meaning was clear. Leia did not flinch. "We did," she said calmly, "and we have decided to spend the rest of our lives together. Ethan asked me to marry him, and I accepted." A heavy silence filled the room. At last, Monroe spoke. "You are serious?" Ethan met his gaze. "Completely. I have no wealth to offer her, Mr. Monroe. Only my devotion. I will spend my life making sure she never regrets this." Monroe turned to Leia one final time. "You understand what you are giving up?" "I do," she said, "and I am choosing this man and this life." Leia's voice was steady. "Uncle James, I love him. I need you to accept this because my mind is made up." Monroe sighed, looking worn out by the whole affair. "Your mother wanted you to have security." Leia's reply was gentle but firm. "Mama wanted me happy, and I am." Turning to Ethan, Monroe's voice was a low growl. "If you hurt her, you destroy me." Ethan met his hard stare without flinching. "I will not hurt her. I swear it." From the doorway, Helen's voice cut in, making them all jump. "James, that is all any man can promise. Can you not see they love each other? Just be happy for her." Monroe's face softened as he looked at his wife. "I just need her to be protected." "She is," Helen insisted, laying a hand on his shoulder. After a long moment, Monroe stood and walked to the window. His voice was thick with emotion when he finally spoke. "I promised my sister I would keep you safe, Leia. Maybe I was so busy keeping you safe I forgot you needed to live your own life." "Cole, I still think you are rough around the edges," Monroe continued, "but I see the way she lights up around you. It reminds me of how I felt about Helen." He glanced at his wife, who gave a small smile. "So if this makes Leia happy, then I will accept it." Leia rushed across the room and hugged him tight. "Thank you," she whispered. Monroe cleared his throat, suddenly all business. "Well, if you are going to do this, we are going to do it properly. You will need a wedding." Ethan stood up. "Actually, sir, we were thinking of something small." "Absolutely not," Helen said firmly. "You are joining this family, and we will celebrate it right. A gathering here at the ranch. Nothing extravagant, just family and close friends." Leia looked at Ethan, who simply said, "As long as you end up my wife, the rest does not matter." Tears filled Leia's eyes as she took his hand. "Then a gathering here sounds perfect." As they were getting ready to leave, Monroe stopped them. "My foreman is leaving come spring. I need a man who knows this land and knows horses. The job is yours, Ethan. It comes with good pay and a house on the property." Ethan felt Leia go still beside him. It was a generous offer, but it meant giving up his freedom. "I appreciate the offer," Ethan said carefully. "But my cabin is the first thing I have ever truly owned. I am not ready to give it up." Monroe nodded, looking almost pleased. "Fair enough, but I could still use your help with my horses, part-time on your own terms." "I could do that," Ethan agreed. "I'm not looking for an employee, Cole," Monroe said. "I am looking for a partner I can trust." That single word, trust, was an olive branch. "Then we have a deal," Ethan said, extending his hand. Monroe shook it firmly. "Welcome to the family." "My niece will not live in a shack," Monroe grumbled later at dinner, after Helen suggested they help expand the cabin for future children. "It is not a shack," Ethan protested, but Leia just smiled. "I only need Ethan and a roof over our heads." Still, Ethan considered the offer. Accepting help was not about losing independence. It was about building a family. "We would appreciate the help," he finally said. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, on the first truly warm day of late February. The world outside was muddy, but inside the ranch house it was a different world. Ethan stood at the front of the room and watched Leia descend the stairs in a simple white dress. Her smile could have lit up the entire state of Texas. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. Ethan's hands shook as he slid the simple gold band on her finger. His voice was rough with emotion as he spoke his vows. "I promise to love you in sunshine and in storm," he said. "And I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of my life." By the time they were pronounced husband and wife, there was not a dry eye in the room, not even Monroe's. The celebration afterward was joyful, filled with good food and warm company. As the sun began to set, Monroe pulled Ethan aside. "I was wrong about you, Cole," he said quietly. "I judged you by your past. I apologize for that." He extended his hand. "Take care of her." Ethan shook it. "Every day of my life," he promised. The ride back to their cabin was quiet and peaceful. When they arrived, Ethan dismounted, then turned to help his wife down from her horse. As the last of the winter chill faded, Ethan looked at their little cabin and knew this was the start of a good life. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing he was right where he belonged. Spring brought new life to the land and new friendships for Ethan, as Monroe's ranch hands came to help expand the cabin. Leia turned the rough shelter into a true home, planting a garden and filling the rooms with warmth and color. She told him they were not just becoming civilized, they were becoming a home. Ethan even started writing his poetry again, inspired by the life they were building together and the woman who made it all possible. By May, they had wonderful news. A baby was due late next winter. Ethan was filled with both fear and a joy so deep it shook him. He confessed he did not know how to be a father, but Leia promised they would learn together. Even Monroe offered a rare smile and insisted on helping them finish the new room for the child. That summer, Ethan discovered a gift for calming difficult horses. His reputation as a horse whisperer spread, and other ranchers began paying for his help. He told Leia he was finally building a good name because she had given him a life worth building. As her belly grew, Ethan would often speak to their unborn child, full of wonder at the new life they had created. One afternoon in early fall, Davies from the general store brought shocking news. Garrett, the man whose cruelty had forced Ethan into a fight 3 years prior, was back in town and wanted to make peace. A cold fear gripped Ethan, but Leia, her hand on her pregnant belly, insisted they face him together. The next day, they found Garrett in the saloon. He looked older and walked with a limp. After a tense silence at a corner table, Garrett spoke. He had come to apologize for his actions all those years ago. He admitted that his cruelty to the horse was wrong, and that he finally understood why Ethan had to stop him. Ethan could hardly believe the words he was hearing. I was full of whiskey and anger, and I took it out on a helpless animal. You stopped me. He paused. Yeah, you nearly sent me to my maker, but you saved that horse. You taught me a hard lesson I needed learning. Ethan's voice was low. I lost control. What I did to you, and to that horse, was wrong. Garrett shook his head. What you did was understandable. I came here to clear the air. I don't hold a grudge. Leia's hand found Ethan's, and he squeezed back. I appreciate you saying so, and I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. It's all water under the bridge, Garrett said, standing to shake Ethan's hand. I hear you're doing right by yourself. A wife, a baby on the way. I'm glad for you. After Garrett left, Ethan sank into his chair. Leia moved closer, her arms around him. That was something else, she said. Yeah, for 3 years I figured I was the villain in that story. She kissed his head. Can you forgive yourself now? He thought of the angry man he was and the loved man he'd become. Yeah, he said at last, I reckon I can. When winter blew in early that year, they were ready for it. The cabin was snug and stocked, with a new room just waiting for the baby. Ethan had plenty of work, and Monroe had turned into a real friend. One cold January night, Leia's time came. The doctor and Helen arrived, and Ethan paced the floor for 12 awful hours until he finally heard a baby's cry. Helen opened the door, her eyes wet. It's a girl, Ethan, a healthy little girl, and your wife is asking for you. He went in on unsteady legs. Leia was in bed, tired but shining, holding a small bundle. Come meet your daughter, she whispered. He looked at the tiny face, a mess of dark hair and eyes that would surely turn green like her mama's. She was perfect. She's beautiful, he choked out. Takes after her father, Leia smiled, making him laugh through his tears. He sat on the bed, and she placed their daughter in his arms. This warm, real little person they had made together. Every wall Ethan had ever built came tumbling down. What should we name her? Leia whispered. He looked at his wife and their tiny daughter, the life they had made from pure grit and hope. Joy, he said, his voice thick with emotion, because that is what you both are to me. That spring, life bloomed right alongside the garden. Their little girl grew, and so did Ethan, standing in the community as the man who understood horses. One afternoon, Monroe rode up, his face all business. Cole, we need to have a talk, he said, getting straight to the point. I have a proposition for you. I'm getting too old to run this ranch alone, Monroe said plainly, holding out a folded document. I want you as a full partner. Equal share, your name right there on the deed. He told Ethan the ranch needed a man he could trust to carry on the legacy, someone who understood the work. This is not a handout, son. You have earned it. A year ago, Ethan would have run from an offer like that, scared of being tied down. But now, thinking of his family, he felt only a deep sense of gratitude. I will read it, Ethan said, his voice shaking just a little. Thank you for trusting me. That evening, Ethan told Leia about the offer. It is time I stopped being afraid of building something bigger, he admitted. Leia smiled, her hand finding his. You have not been that scared man for a long time. He pulled her close, realizing she had seen the man he could be long before he saw it himself. He was no longer afraid of life's storms. He had learned that sometimes the most beautiful things come after the rain. A woman who laughed in a storm had taught a quiet cowboy how to find joy. When the baby stirred inside, he followed Leia into the warm light of their home, a real, genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.